Okay, let's talk about snakes. Okay, snakes were sacred and they had the ability to give people prophetic vision. So let's talk about it. Did you know that serpents, often seen as symbols of danger, were once revered as divine beings? It's like finding out that broccoli, universally dreaded by children, is a superfood. For example, in ancient Middle Eastern cultures, the serpent was linked with wisdom and prophecy. It's as if the serpent was their version of an all knowing Siri or Alexa or ChatGPT. One such deity was Inanna, an ancient Sumerian goddess who was not only associated with serpents, but was also known as the divine mother who reveals the laws. Imagine a female figure with a snake's head. It sounds like a character from a fantasy movie, but sculptures dating back to 4000 BC, unearthed in Sumer, depict just that. In Crete, serpents were as integral to worshiping the female deity as coffee is to a morning routine. Artifacts found all over the island show goddesses or even priestesses holding snakes, a bit like how we hold our phones nowadays. They even had snake tubes to feed sacred serpents. It's like the ancient version of a pet feeder. The trend of the sacred serpent wasn't limited to these areas. From Egypt's cobra goddess to Greece's serpent goddess, it's like the Starbucks of ancient religions, found in every corner of the world. One of the most intriguing tales is that of the Pythia, a priestess who gave out divine wisdom in Delphi, Greece, all while sitting on a stool coiled by a snake named Python. Imagine getting advice from someone sitting on a snake. Yet, even when male deities took over, mostly women still provided the respected counsel. This ancient reverence for the serpent goddess, as surprising as finding out that your quiet neighbor is a rock star, extended to the lands of Canaan too. Here, the goddess was known as the Serpent Lady. So next time you see a snake, remember it was once regarded as a symbol of divine wisdom, prophecy, and was revered in ancient cultures. Here's to viewing the world and snakes in a new light. But let's dive even deeper. Serpents gave goddesses divine wisdom. Now, how did they do that? Did you know that the ancient world had its own version of political consultants? Imagine your favorite advisor from a Game of Thrones episode, but with an uncanny ability to commune with the divine. This was the life of the oracular priestess. These women were the go-to gurus for political, governmental, and military advice in ancient Babylon and Greece. It's like having your own personal hotline to the divine, a God-tuned radio. They were believed to have a direct line to the gods, who they believed held the wisdom of the entire universe. But here's the interesting part. These priestesses weren't just fortune tellers. They didn't issue doom-laden prophecies of a preordained future. Instead, they were more like savvy strategic consultants offering advice on the best course of action based on divine wisdom. It's like having a divine chess master whispering the best moves in your ear, right? The evidence for these spiritual advisors goes back to the earliest records of the goddess in Sumer, known as Nina, Inini, or Inanna. Fast forward a few centuries, and Babylonian queens like Sibtu and Nakia were relying on these priestesses, who were known as Apelutu or Mutu, to navigate political affairs. And if I get these pronunciations wrong, forgive me. I'm a better writer than I am a speaker. And these women weren't just confined to the East. In Alexandria, during the 2nd century BC, these Sibylline oracles wielded tremendous influence on pagan thought. They were the ancient equivalent of modern influencers with a divine twist. Even in the temple in Jerusalem around 620 BC, we see references to women who dared to prophesy. St. Patrick, known for bringing Christianity to Ireland, warned against pythonesses, a term still defined as a prophetess or witch in most English dictionaries. So next time you're faced with a tough decision, remember the oracular priestesses. Their divine wisdom can inspire us to make the best moves in our own complex game of life. But let's dig even further, shall we? How did they get this counseling from the snakes? Well, think of this phrase, my mind has extraordinary powers. Okay, Merlin Stone in her book, When God Was a Woman, uncovered some fascinating history about serpents and their connection to divine revelation. Picture this, it's like finding an ancient treasure map, only the treasure is knowledge. Okay. You remember the story of Cassandra from the Trojan War, right? She was the one with the gift of prophecy. Apparently, as a child, she was left overnight at the shrine of Delphi, surrounded by sacred snakes. The next morning, her mother found these serpents licking Cassandra's ears. Sounds wild, right? But this is said to be the source of her prophetic powers. Now let's fast forward to modern times. This is where it gets really good. Scientists have found that snake venom, specifically from Crete, cobra, or other elapids, can induce a mental state similar to that of hallucinogenic drugs. Think of it as if you've had too many tequila shots and you start seeing things in a new light, okay? Stone explains, quote, normally, when a person receives a venomous snake bite and subsequently the venom is introduced into the system, there are various reactions depending on the species of snake, including swelling, internal bleeding, difficulty in breathing, and paralysis. These effects often prove fatal. However, there are recent records of people who have been immunized, thus preventing the venom of a snake bite from causing death. When bitten after the immunization, especially by Crete, cobra, or other elapids, the subject experiences an emotional and mental state that has been compared to the effects of hallucinogenic drugs. Even more intriguing is that the oracles of ancient Greece also gave prophecies in verse. So could there be a connection? Stone shared an intriguing story. She said, in an account kept by his wife, William Haast of the Florida Serpentarium, where venom is extracted for various medical uses, described his reaction to a crate bite received after he had been repeatedly immunized for his work. The account was later recalled in H. Kirsch's Cobras in the Garden. Kirsch writes, quote, suddenly he began to feel pleasantly light and weirdly buoyant, almost gay, as though he were slightly intoxicated. Gay meaning happy, of course, right? He had developed an acute sense of hearing, almost painfully acute. The air about him was a charivari, a veritable jungle of discordant noises. It was as if he was under the influence of a strange narcotic. He had one inexplicable sensation. It was a peculiar emotional reaction which he could not control. As he lay with his eyes involuntarily closed, he could see things. There were visions in front of him. And she continues in this quote, in another report on the same incident, Marshall Smith of Life magazine quoted Haast as saying, quote, I found myself making up the most wonderful verses. My mind had extraordinary powers, unquote. It may or may not be related, but the oracles of the shrines in Greece were said to be given in verse. So, now you have the story behind why the hell was a snake being used in the story of the Garden of Eden. How was it that the snake was what put the woman, Eve, into a second-class citizenship piece? Well, there you have it. Okay? Hope this was interesting. You will find more if you like and subscribe these videos, but then also to get my book. I've got all this in chapter 1 of We Aren't Going Back, A History of Women's Social Progress Over 200 Years in the United States. All right, see you in the next video.